Nope, I was wrong.
Cassandra Cain, Stephanie Brown, and Barbara Gordon finally get their own series. Thank God. That should have happened a decade ago, but it's finally here. Let's take a look at the first issue. There's backstory that doesn't matter, you don't need to know. Cassie, Steph, and Barbara are moving into an apartment to the Hill, which seems to be kind of a hip, Brooklyn-esque area of Gotham. While moving into their new place, Sandra, wanting to lay low, gets mugged. Don't worry, she gets them back, while Barbara adjusts from being a single gal in the city to having to look after two rambunctious young people. It's a charming arc. I like it quite a lot. Cassandra Cain beat up the thugs that mugged her, and they stole their muscle car, which they like better than their official bat Vespas that they were given. Truth be told, I think Vespas are really cool. The girls are not so into them, which is fair because that is a pretty sick car. And the issue ends with them encountering the Saints. Of course, I like this issue. I've mentioned this before, but Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain were the first few characters in comics I really followed. Truth be told, I am a little irritated that there's unnecessary backstory for this, but it's a fun comic with a chill hangout vibe, which is one of my favorite types of stories. Whenever I'm out at a restaurant and they give me a number, I get kind of obsessed with trying to spin the thing for as long as I can. It's a game I get obsessed with. This is my mom. She's very good at it. She knows math. And this is me. What you're missing out here is me doing this like 100 times and it falling over until I finally get it. Yes! Yes! Yeah! Oh, dang! That ruled. This took me like 20, 30 times. Yeah! I'm happy for you, Sean.
You're listening to Peaceful Farming Village 103 AM, the gentle radio station, a place where nothing bad could ever happen, where we don't get involved with the politics of the kingdom. We just sit around the fire telling gentle stories and admonishing the dreams of the orphan boy, who I raised since that mysterious man in a cloak gave him to me the same night the royal family was murdered.
I find that Batman is deceptively hard to draw, especially for advanced beginners like myself. I feel it's the head horns that really throw everything off. If they're not perfect, the eye screams in pain. Here's my latest attempt at him. Doesn't help that I'm trying to compare myself to Darwin Cook. Surrounded by total darkness, walking in the shadow of that giant. There is something fun about learning a skill and understanding on a deeper level why the things you like are good. Joker's first appearance is wild. It starts with him hijacking the radio to announce that he's going to kill a man and steal his diamond, which he's very successful at. And he keeps doing it, but it can't be all bad. They do die with a smile on their face. It's pushing Batman to the limit. It doesn't help that the Joker is a master of disguise. This art, by the by, is flippin' terrifying. Originally, Joker was perfectly fine with killing Batman. Joker runs kind of roughshod, but he does eventually get cornered. In fact, it's actually Robin that puts him down initially. But honestly, this is probably the last time we ever saw the Joker. This is not the Kremlin. The Kremlin is actually a large complex containing numerous buildings. This is St. Basil's Cathedral. This information, of course, is really helpful to people at parties circa, say, 2019. And because you were a big fan of Rise of Nations as a teenager, you emphatically insist that, no, this is the Kremlin. Of course, that's just a hypothetical. Zoo Warriors from the Magic Mountain is one of the classics of the wuxia genre, notable for bringing in some Star Wars people to help with the special effects, notable in the West for inspiring John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China, and pushing the wuxia genre into a more supernatural bent. It's also, funny. I think one of the reasons it's popular, besides the beautiful cinematography, it's a movie that's not really afraid to have fun. I don't think it gets praised enough for that. It involves a soldier boy running away from a seemingly pointless war. Also, Sammo Hung is in this movie. Not in it long enough. I really like his character. The soldier boy escapes the war into. That's where he finds himself in the Magic Mountain, where he gets roped into helping several heroes defeat the Blood Devil. And just maybe along the way, he can become a hero himself. First time I really started to follow comics was the arc where Stephanie Brown became Robin. Unfortunately, though, that was too short. And I've always really liked Stephanie Brown. She's kind of like the protagonist that I experienced the DC universe with. I have a lot of nostalgia for her. I was curious about her origin, so I read the first comic she appeared in. Detective Comics 647. It's about her complicated relationship with her father. One of the interesting things about Stephanie is that her dad is a supervillain. True, he's kind of a low-tier Riddler ripoff who's not clever enough to leave riddles and just leaves clues. If supervillains existed, this is what the life of their children would be. Stephanie makes the day-glow life of supervillains feel realistic because her father hurts people that he's ostensibly supposed to care about by only caring about himself. Her father actually has kind of a clever plan. He just gets other people to commit crimes for him That's why Stephanie is trying to ruin by sending clues to Batman.
Interestingly,
Stephanie was originally a lot more cynical. Superheroics is good for mental health. Also, Tim just has objectively bad music takes.
Stalker was a sword and sorcery comic book with art by Steve Ditko, but it was written by Paul Levitz. Apparently it was kind of a last minute thing. DC wanted another sword and sorcery comic. Paul said he tried to do his own version of the Eternal Champion series. The comic follows a young man by the name of... He actually doesn't have a name initially. He's just a poor boy. Nobody loves him. At one point in the past, he had worked for this evil queen who said she'd make him a knight, but she didn't. He makes a really smart decision then to sell his soul to an evil god. It's kind of where all the trouble starts for him. The four comics follow his trials and tribulations in attempting to get into the underworld. They've brought him into the modern day mainstream DC universe a few times. I don't know. The thing about DC is they actually have a few of these sword and sorcery comics lying around. They all seem so embarrassed of the sword and sorcery stuff. For my 2 cents, I'd really love there to be like a fantasy comic universe. That'd be cool. Somebody should do that. I should do that. I took a look at Booster Gold's first issue. Booster Gold is a really interesting idea for a superhero. It's one of the first times I've ever noticed them trying to do the celebrity superhero, which is an idea that's been floating around in the periphery for years. And I don't think it's ever been really nailed as well as it has with Booster. And up to this point, I've never really read his first issue. I've known about him like on the periphery of other characters, so I decided to give that a look. I also find it kind of interesting, and it was fun. It was really fun. It was delightful even. One thing I found really interesting is that it's the first time ever I noticed in an older comic that you're expected to know about other comics. Like, they're not trying to sell you on this brand new character who happens to be a superhero. It's expected that you come in here and you know that he's a superhero. And you should have a good knowledge of the superhero genre. So I'm playing Crusader Kings 3, and this is my current ruler, King Joshua and his wife. And they have a little bit of a complicated relationship. They're getting along better now.
Scooby Apocalypse continues to be pretty fun. I read issues 4 to 8. It thrilled, it delighted, heck, I even laughed. In this round of comics, we get a deep look into the backstory of Velma. Would you believe she grew up a deeply lonely child? The biggest revelation from this issue is that the uber powerful people that messed with her nanite experiment, they're her 4 brothers, but Velma's disconnect with the rest of the world is causing a lot of tension with Daphne. Daphne kind of blames Velma, not unjustifiably, for the end of the world. The two throughout this series have had an antagonistic relationship. There is this thing called character development that's happening, and both of them are warming up to each other. The most controversial thing about this series is Shaggy's redesign, and I get it. He also looks a little bit like Oliver Queen, right? I'm not the only one who sees that. They really nail Shaggy in this. Shaggy is afraid constantly in this, but he is 100% willing to run into danger. Real creepy danger. The series really nails how he's the heart of the team. I'm just saying, I didn't give this a chance when it initially came out because the designs annoyed me, and I was very wrong. Count Juan Rafael Dante. If you were reading comics in the 70s, you may recognize this guy. The Count here claimed to be a ton of things. A descendant from a line of Spanish nobles, a Cuban freedom fighter. Dante was in fact a fabulist. His real name was John Keegan. He was a hairdresser in Chicago. But Count Dante actually did know his stuff. At least according to things I've read, he did know jiu-jitsu, karate, and was an actual black belt. And he did work for a brief time as the director of the United States Karate Association. He is a big liar, so do take this with a grain of salt. The reason he left the United States Karate Association is because they wouldn't want to teach black people. Count Dante is also one of the central figures of the Dojo Wars. Dante had a rival in all of this stuff. As the founder of the Black Dragon Fighting Society, with the Green Dragon Fighting Society, Dante and several of his students stormed the dojo, and in the ensuing melee, one of Dante's students was murdered. It's not the only infamous story that follows the Count. He claimed that he showed up at Muhammad Ali's house to challenge him to a duel. Count Dante has been an influence on weird charlatans, especially through the Black Dragon Fighting Society that he founded. Love Everlasting follows Joanne Peterson. Stuck in a strange cycle. Every time she falls in love with somebody, she wakes up in a new universe, and in the middle of a new epic love story. But it hasn't just been her waking up in new universes. It's also been this guy on the left, the mysterious cowboy. Who is he? Well, the new issue has just been released, and this is the start of a new arc, just west of love. His name is Jake. He was the shy younger brother of a sheriff, Henry, who was sweet on Joan. Now, Henry was sweet on Joan. He did all the right things. He even asked Joan's drunk father for permission to court her. And the whole time Henry was courting her, Jake was there in the background. A quiet man compared to Henry. But the West is a violent place, and unfortunately, this version of Joan's father gets killed. And then Henry bites the bullet trying to bring in her father's killers. And Jake takes it upon himself to get revenge for both Joan's father and his brother. He may have been quite stoic, but the truth of the gosh darn matter is he loved that girl. And after getting shot by the final killer, she nurses him back to health, and the two embrace and fall in love. Then boom, Joan vanishes. He's one of the guys. This is the first time we've ever seen it from the other side. I've been reading this whole series thinking this was a simulation of some sort, and it might be, but the fact that the cowboy is a real guy with real emotions means there's something bigger going on here. I love this series so much. It's my favorite ongoing. If I haven't mentioned this before, I love the art and coloring. I feel I need to get that officially on the record that the art and coloring in this is also fantastic. Perfect. Perfect choice for a crossover. Jabberjaw was the drummer for a band called the Neptunes. They toured around underwater cities. I thought it was weirdly high concept. For one of Hanna-Barbera's mini Scooby-Doo ripoffs. It's harmless fun, and also Jabberjaw talks like Curly. And he's one of the few deep-sea creatures that Aquaman doesn't need his aqua telepathy for. What is Jabberjaw, who's from the future, by the way, doing in modern-day Earth? Portals, also the Sea Lab 2020. Listen, if this is a hint at DC Universe meets Adult Swim, I'll be excited for that. That'll be cool. We don't get Captain Murphy. We get some jag-off calling himself the Ocean Master. Listen, the day is saved. The Neptunes get a new hit song.
Why aren't more vampires superheroes? They have a suite of superpowers that could stun superstitious supervillains. Is it the blood sucking? Most vampires don't even do that anymore. Well, the All-Nighter seeks to answer this very specific question, as it follows Alex and Joy, two vampires who decide to become superheroes, much to the horror of their clan. Not a clan. Vampire clans have been made illegal in this world. Surprise, surprise, there's actually some political maneuvering in a vampire story. The vampires figuring out they can be superheroes has caused a bit of a chain reaction. This is one of those universes where all other fantasy creatures are real. They're in hiding, of course, but going out of superheroes means that all the fantasy creatures can now just be fantasy creatures if they say they're superheroes and or supervillains. See, in this universe, monsters come into existence if enough people believe in them. It's a pretty fun series. Solid recommend. In this comic, Porky Pig tries to keep his soul while working for Lex Luthor. Porky Pig, founder of a failed cryptocurrency, has fallen on hard times. But after a chance meeting with billionaire Lex Luthor, he's put in charge of Lex's new social media network. It's experiencing some growing pains. But our boy Pork is assured that this is just the start, and they'll fix that later. That means our boy Porky Pig has to really knuckle down and grapple with the complexities of running an international social media network by figuring out who's stealing sandwiches from the employee fridge, while Lex Luthor definitely doesn't have any evil plans. That's not Lex. He's a perfect, innocent angel. Elmer Fudd hunted Batman once. It weirdly kind of worked. This was part of a series of crossovers DC Comics did with its fellow Warner Brothers stablemate, the Looney Tunes. This one follows former mob hitman Elmer Fudd trying to kill the gangster Bugs the Bunny, because Bugs killed his gal pal Silver St. Clair, who's also a former gal pal of Bruce Wayne. That might come up later. Bugs says, though, yes, he did pull the trigger, but somebody paid him to do that. It was Bruce Wayne. I told you it'd come up later. So does Elmer succeed in killing Bruce Wayne? Yes, in fact he did, and this was the very last Batman comic DC will ever produce. No, obviously not, but Elmer does surprisingly hold up in a fight against Batman. When Bruce hears that Silver St. Cloud was killed, he goes on a tiny bit of a vengeance spree against a bunch of humanized Looney Tunes. And then, in spoilers ahead, turns out she was still alive and she had just faked her death. And the three men, Elmer, Batman, and Bugs, all sit in the bar, mournfully drinking carrot juice.